Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware is joining us. He's a key member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're very close to the president. You're a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Are you getting any specific answers for why the administration was, for all practical purposes, blindsided by this Taliban victory within only a few days?
Well, Wolf, this has been a hard week as we have all watched the tragic scenes unfolding in Kabul and the unexpectedly swift collapse of the Afghan military and government. And I think there's going to be plenty of time for pointing fingers and for an after-action review, as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan promised today. And we should be pulling together, Congress and the executive, our military and State Department, to ensure that we get as many Americans and Afghan allies and partners out of Kabul safely as we possibly can in the weeks ahead. The military has said publicly, when they get the airport fully operational again and they've fully secured it, they can remove as many as 5,000 people a day. I am hopeful that in the coming days we'll get to that operational tempo and be able to safely remove all Americans and our closest Afghan partners and allies.
But you've been briefed extensively over these past several weeks. Did you ever expect that the Afghan political leadership would simply escape, run away, get out of the country within a few days, and that the entire 300,000 member Afghan military would collapse, put their guns down, all their weapons down, and for all practical purposes, hand over all that U.S. military equipment, tanks, artillery, everything else, armored personnel carriers, to the Taliban? Did you expect that to take place within 3 or 4 days?
Not at all. Wolf, I was shocked by the speed with which the Taliban swept across the country and the fact that, after fighting bravely and hard for many, many years, the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces largely collapsed without a fight in many provincial capitals, and that the Afghan government collapsed and their leaders fled. That was quite a surprise to me. I will say this, Wolf, going back to my first visit to Afghanistan a decade ago, it was clear that our initial mission in Afghanistan, which was striking back at al-Qaeda after 9/11 and knocking down the capability of any terrorist group to attack our homeland from Afghanistan, had largely been accomplished in the first few years. And the expanded mission undertaken over 4 administrations of trying to build a nation in Afghanistan was very difficult, very tenuous, and that frankly, even after pouring tens of billions of dollars over many years, I saw a decade ago on my first visit to Afghanistan that the Afghan National Security Forces and the government that led them were not likely in the long run to succeed in holding off the Taliban and in developing a deep and legitimate government.
I think it's more like hundreds of billions of dollars, U.S. taxpayer dollars, that were wasted for all practical purposes over these years in Afghanistan. And on the 20th anniversary next month of 9/11, the Taliban once again will be in control of that entire country. As you know, Senator, a senior White House official is telling CNN today there's no second guessing of the president's strategy. But when you see this absolute chaos unfolding, shouldn't there be some second guessing?
Well, 2 things, if I could. Well, first, this was not a wasted effort over 20 years. I've been speaking to veterans, to Gold Star families, to very concerned Americans who've been calling me alarmed about Afghan partners or Americans they know who are in harm's way in Afghanistan. The men and women of the United States Armed Forces and our Afghan partners over the last 2 decades bought us desperately needed breathing room to push back on al-Qaeda, to degrade their ability to attack us, to buy the United States time to strengthen our own defenses, to build a global network of counterterrorism partners. And I'll remind you that when President Biden took office early this year, the intelligence community's assessment was that the global war on terror has largely moved on from Afghanistan. And to the extent we face threats, they are much more from other countries like Somalia or Libya or Mali or Nigeria, other places in the world. And second, yes, of course, there has to be accountability for some of the missteps here. President Biden, in a clear speech to our nation last night, said the buck stops here. One of the reasons I've long admired and supported President Biden is he said he won't mislead the American people. He's been clear-eyed about why he made the decision to complete our withdrawal after 20 years of fighting in Afghanistan. And both he last night and National Security Advisor Sullivan today, in a lengthy press conference, made it clear that they intend to focus on this urgent mission right now in securing the safe passage out of Afghanistan of our citizens and our key partners and allies, and that there will be an after-action review.
But aren't you concerned, Senator, that with the Taliban now in control of all of Afghanistan, with access to all the U.S. military equipment that was left behind, that they're and opening up all those prisons, Al-Qaeda terrorists free right now, Taliban terrorists free right now, that there could be a resurgence of anti-American terrorism emanating from Afghanistan?
Wolf, that's absolutely right. That is a serious and legitimate concern. But I'll remind you, we don't have a significant troop presence on the ground in countries like Somalia or Yemen or Libya. We maintain a robust counterterrorism capability that we've built up over 20 years. And we're going to be able to, we must continue to maintain that capability with regards to any resurgence of Al-Qaeda or ISIS on the ground in Afghanistan. It is concerning that Bagram Air Base was abandoned and that military prison at Bagram has now been opened by the Taliban. And I am concerned about developments on the ground in Afghanistan in terms of our security. That is the sort of issue that we in the Foreign Relations Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee will be focused on in the months ahead. But I have confidence in President Biden, his national security team, our military, and our State Department that they will remain vigilant in protecting our country from threats overseas.
Yeah, what worries me so much is so many of those Al-Qaeda terrorists and Taliban terrorists who killed so many Americans in Afghanistan and NATO personnel are now free, and for all practical purposes, they're taking charge of that country. Senator Chris Coons, as usual, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Just ahead, we'll have more on the political fallout for President Biden as he faces very sharp criticism from both Republicans and some Democrats over the fall of Afghanistan.